Hey, everybody, it is Trags Mike Petralia back with the latest installment of the Jungle Roar podcast powered by CLNS Media and our great friends at Prize Picks. Back with us here on this training camp opening edition of the JRP is the one and only Richard Skinner. Skinny, a longtime reporter covering the Cincinnati Bengals and the National Football League. Skinny, today was the annual Mock Turtle Soup Day down at Paycor Stadium, where we get a chance to speak with Duke Tobin, of course, the vice president of player personnel for the Cincinnati Bengals, along with Zach Taylor, both coordinators, actually all three coordinators. That would be Darren Simmons of the special teams, Al Golden of the defense, and of course, Dan Picture of the offense. And want to get your impressions on what struck you the most, beginning first with Zach Taylor, who I think it's kind of sneaky, maybe under the radar. He is one of those head coaches I think will come under a lot of scrutiny early in the season, especially if the team doesn't get off to the kind of start that a lot of people are expecting with all of the roster changes in the offseason.
Yeah, just so to put peek behind the curtains, we do this in different pods. Each of the TVs have a little pod of their own, and some people like yourself would do a lot of video. Jay Morrison is doing a lot of video as well for James Rapine. You guys were in kind of those pods. I was in the writers pod, even though I'm really not writing anymore. It was very nice of them to invite me to the lunch, and I took them up on it, so I got a chance to go down and at least listen in and ask a couple questions here and there. I think Zach knows how big this year is, because the front office has done a lot of things to make this roster better. He got asked a couple different times about, did you find the secret sauce last year for playing players in the preseason? Are you going to do it again? Are you going to do it more? Going to do it less? He wouldn't commit to any of that. I suspect he'll probably do what he did last year in terms of playing time for both guys on offense and defense. We talked about B.J. Hill a little bit. It does sound like he'll be back at some point in training camp. I guess that's some good news. He missed all of the OTAs. He was there, but he missed all the OTAs. I didn't think it was going to linger into this part of it where he was put on the PUP list, but it sounds like he'll be back and be okay. But it's funny, there weren't a lot of bombshells out of today. Last year, there was all kinds of questions about contracts and players, and this year it was kind of pretty calm.
So I asked Duke Tobin about the fact that there hasn't been a lot of drama this training camp or heading into this training camp. And he's like, he gave kind of the stock answer you would expect. The only people that really pay attention to the so-called drama outside of the organization are people on the outside of the organization, namely the fans and the media. And it's something that creates a lot of interest in the team. And while that's great, it distracts from what their job is. But I think, he took it a step further, saying that this team is really focused. And you can tell by the business approach that everybody on the team took towards the offseason. To me, that was very telling. And one of the things where you really have to read in between the lines, what he's saying is this was all business. DJ Turner, and he didn't mention the name DJ Turner, but guys like DJ Turner and Dax Hill, and even maybe to a lesser degree, Chase Brown, showing up on their own in the offseason, doing the work with the team when they didn't necessarily have to, at least until mandatory minicamp. That was a sign, I think, to him, it was a sign to Zach Taylor, that these guys are focused on the one central mission at the heart of everything that the 2026 Bengals stand for, and that is shooting for and winning the first Super Bowl in franchise history.
Yeah, and I think that was always a good sign. I mean, I remember talking to DJ Turner the first time he was in the locker room when Phase 2 of the OTA started, and I didn't even really expect him until minicamp, to be honest with you, because that's the only mandatory thing. But he showed up and talked about the vibe he felt, the energy he felt, that he was there getting ready to work. And I think the only thing that could upset the apple cart this training camp, if there's a small thing, and I don't think it's going to happen, but it could, is if somehow, some way, there becomes animosity in the DJ Turner, Dax Hill camp and
Right.
the Bengals when it comes to contract talks. I think, even though it's the same agent, I do think DJ is the logical guy to get done if you're only going to get one of the two done. But let's just say this lingers, and they find out they're far apart, and DJ's catches wind that they're going to franchise tag him after this season. What does that do? And maybe we see some of the because I think one of the lingering questions, that we'll get to some of this, but one of the questions going into camp is, what is the depth at cornerback? Is
Right.
Takario Davis a rookie? Is he ready? Is Josh Newton ready for a bounce back? DJ Ivey finally starts the season healthy. What does that mean? It might mean all great things, like all three are capable backups who can start some games for you if they have to. But if somehow in camp they're not looking the part, maybe DJ Turner looks around and goes, I got a lot of leverage now, man. You know what? I will throw a monkey wrench into this. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't either.
I think that's the only thing in this camp that could create a little bit of noise.
I did ask Duke Tobin, what about DJ Turner? What about Dax Hill? He looked at me and said, I'm not going there. I'm not going to talk about contracts that haven't been completed yet. And that, again, is the kind of answer you would expect from Duke Tobin. But that is the approach the Bengals are going to take. They are not going to let any secrets, I think, slip out. And they are going to ask, I'm sure, and they already have, I'm certain, the representatives for DJ Turner and Dax Hill not to communicate with the media. And, surprisingly, or maybe not, I'll ask you, Skinny, the players and their representatives in years past have been pretty respectful of that, meaning they haven't been running to reporters saying that, they lowballed us here, they lowballed us there. There have been exceptions, but for the most part, I think the players who negotiate and the representatives who negotiate with the Brown and Blackburn family understand that they're trying to get everything done beforehand in private and not let any details slip.
Well, and I think some of that too is, it only seems like there's a handful of agents. There's not, but it feels like we know who the agents are representing players. So they may just be negotiating these guys' contracts now, but what happens when another Bengals player who is under their representation is up for another contract? And the last time you went through this, you cried to the media the whole time. Maybe that one doesn't go quite as well because of that. So, yeah, I think it's a smart way for both sides to try to do it. I do.
Yeah, and I just don't think the Bengals gain anything by negotiating this in public or even leaking any details or saying we'd love to get this done. Of course Duke did say today, we have all of our players under contract. He said that on multiple occasions.
That's literally, he used the same term with us. So he had his talking point where that was concerned.
Yeah, and he knew that would come up, obviously, when, you have a massive media day and media opportunity like the Bengals had at Paycor Stadium. A lot of the contract storylines are going to come up, as they should. That's part of, the fan interest in the Bengals. Are DJ Turner and Dax Hill going to be part of the team going forward? Another question Duke Tobin got asked, and I thought it was very interesting, and I actually asked this of Duke Tobin, was the Joe Burrow factor. And I reminded him that Burrow had said going into the offseason that he has, and the players and coaches have all the tools they have. When you hear a player say that, Duke, what does that mean to you? And he thought for a moment, and then he said, and I'll paraphrase again, that it's a great sign that the players take those words to heart, that they understand what the mission is here. They understand that, yes, we went out, we want to win, we want to do everything in our power, but they have been empowered now to go out on the field and do it. And he said to hear that from the players means that the players understand what's at stake.
Yeah, and I'm, we've talked about this before. I'm going to guess there have been past years where, the players probably realized they didn't have all the parts that they needed. You're never going to have every part that you need.
No.
Like you're not going to have a five deep, position group. There's not enough roster room in the NFL for that. But at least heading into a season, you feel like you've just got about everything you can possibly have under the salary cap to make a run. And I do think that it will. I think two other things in camp that will be interesting to me as well will be, because this got brought up to Duke, and about some depth pieces, especially at linebacker and especially at the swing tackle spot. And you mentioned, Cody Ford is kind of a guy that now if they're going to try to be a tackle and he's going to be the swing tackle, they believe in him. We'll see. You mentioned Javon Foster as well in there. And then at the linebacker spot, I'm not sure I believe this, but he talked about, we like our room. I don't know if you like the depth in your room. I have a hard time believing that. But let's not forget this. There is some wiggle room under the salary cap because of the Joe Burrow restructure. At this time, literally at this time last year, Dalton Reisner was not on this roster. Noah Fant was not on this roster. Now, Noah Fant didn't play very well for the Bengals, but it was, I think everybody believed, a good signing when they signed him. And Dalton obviously became a starter who they signed back to start again this year. He wasn't on the roster at this point last year. So I do think that's the one other thing in camp to look at is, A, do the two second-year linebackers take the step forward? Zach was asked, what does that look like? And he talked about, you can't tackle, but you can certainly see if they're getting the play recognition and they're triggering the right way. You can see those levels of improvement. And so if they see that, maybe they still get a depth piece. If they don't, then I think they're in panic mode to some degree for that position.
Interesting that I asked Duke about. I had a lot of questions for Duke Tobin today.
Yeah.
Asked Duke about the perception out there that the offensive line group is terrific as a starting five, something they haven't enjoyed, and many fans already know this, and outside observers know this, that the Bengals go into the season with their 5 offensive line positions in place. Joe Burrow does not have to worry about who the projected starters are. But I think there is some concern about the depth. You have 2 rookies on the interior. You have Jalen Rivers, who I think showed promise at times last year. He also showed that he was a rookie last year. And he needed a lot of room to grow. And a lot of Bengal fans hope that he has taken the opportunity this offseason to head in that direction. But what about the tackle position? And Duke said, I don't agree with the question, meaning I don't agree with the thought that we don't have a deep offensive line room. We're going to have trouble putting together or cutting the roster down, cutting the offensive line room down to 10. He said there may be another position where we have to cut somebody because we like our offensive line group and the quality depth there that much. I mean, you mentioned, of course, Cody Ford. There's Andrew Coker. There's Corey Robinson II.
Yeah, there sure are. Yeah, they sure are.
And there's Javon Foster, which you mentioned, right?
Yes.
So there are names there at the tackle position. I don't know if that's a smokescreen for
Absolutely.
And I don't know if that's a smokescreen for we've got other areas that we probably need to shore up before we have to worry about the offensive line room, or they are indeed out there aggressively pursuing some offensive line depth.
I will say in defense of them, nobody's deep in the offensive line department in the National Football League. If you've got 5 guys that can start, you're in pretty good shape. Most teams are looking for starters, for goodness. They have to start somebody, but it's by default a lot of times. So yeah, I do. I would say that the Bengals are not alone. But when Cody Ford did play some tackle 2 years ago, did okay. I mean, he played okay. Then he tried to get in competition for the guard spot last year, right? Looked like he put on a bunch of weight for whatever reason because of that, and probably wasn't quick enough to play tackle. Good thing is they didn't need him because Mims and Orlando Brown played literally almost every snap at their tackle positions last year. That's probably not going to be the case this year. It's just, numbers will catch up to you. But Cody, I think you'd agree, looked like a different guy physically when we saw him in the locker room during the OTA period. He's now going to rep, it sounds like, exclusively at tackle, so he gets a chance to work on that. Javon Foster was a 4th-round pick 2 years ago. I don't know what went haywire in Jacksonville. Maybe he was just a complete bust for whatever reason. But I did a story on him towards the end of OTAs and the minicamp, and Scott Peters sounded pretty excited about him. Like, it's a 4th-round pick with athleticism. We've got to work on some technique things, and okay, that's fine. So they at least don't have a bunch of UDFAs out there that you're trying to back up. You got a 4th-round pick, and you got Cody Ford, who's been in this league for a while, has played some tackle. I don't know if it's going to be perfect. It probably isn't going to be perfect if Mims or Brown miss a long period of time. But I'll give them a pass on that because, again, I just don't think there's a lot of things out there that you can do at this time of year to make yourself better at that position.
Anything else that struck your fancy about the comments Duke Tobin had to say today?
No, he is funny. He does holds his cards close to the vest. He was just asked about kind of along the lines of adding to the roster, and he even said, if we find somebody who's going to be the 90th man and be a better 90th man than what we have, or a better, I think he's the 65th man, or a better 26th man, we're going to go try to do that. And I believe that. I honestly do. I think through that first preseason game, I think they're going to have a better understanding about the 2 second-year linebackers and whatever steps forward they've taken, and probably about how things sit at the swing tackle position. And if things aren't looking rosy at that point, then I do think you'll see them be as aggressive as they can be with whatever's out there to go add to those position groups. And probably the same for the backup corners.
He is Richard Skinner, longtime reporter covering all things Cincinnati Bengals and the National Football League. It's a scorching sports summer, and you can make all of your picks on Prize Picks. The WNBA and baseball are heating up, and with big tennis slams and major golf tournaments on the horizon, there's no better place for all of your summer sports picks than Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app. The thing you'll love about Prize Picks is how easy it is to follow and develop a rooting interest. And it works everywhere in America. With Prize Picks, you're making all of the picks on WNBA, soccer, and even baseball. And Prize Picks makes it super easy. All you need to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stats, then submit your lineup, and you can follow along with the progress right there in the app. And with their new blended lineups, you can add a winner, spread, or total pick on top of your player picks for even bigger payouts. It makes watching the games even more exciting when every goal, every pass could win you more money. Prize Picks is available in all 50 states, including California, Texas, Georgia, and Florida. Download the app today. Use that code CLNS. Get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Again, download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app. All right, let's move on with Richard Skinner here on the Jungle World podcast, powered by Prize Picks. To Zach Taylor. And we touched on Zach Taylor a little bit earlier, but it was interesting. Al Golden let it slip. I don't know if this is a big secret or not, but Al Golden mentioned to us in his little pod that Zach Taylor had a directive for the coaching staff a couple of days ago, and I found it very interesting. That was, make sure all of you spend every waking moment figuring out how you can have our best players on a very talented roster on the field as much as possible. When you hear Al Golden say that, what do you think Zach Taylor is telling the coaching staff?
That's a good question, because there's also, Duke even brought this up about how they want to have waves at defensive line, right? So I think they really literally want to have 2 shifts of defensive linemen. And maybe, I don't know what he means by that. Maybe it's if Kyle Duggar is a better option as a third safety as opposed to somebody else as a slot corner, let's do that. That's a really good one to me.
So, and I asked Zach what he meant by that because he spoke to us right after Al Golden, so it worked out conveniently. And he said, all I'm trying to tell the coaching staff is to make sure that we get the best use out of our players on our roster. Now, he's also indicated that can change depending on the scheme. And he's, I guess, speaking offensively and defensively, but that can change scheme-wise from game to game. So what he's saying is, I think if you read between the lines here, maybe they have to do a better job, they think, of scheming for their opponent with their talent, because now they have more now they definitely have more pieces. It's going to require maybe a little more thought in how to attack each opponent going into each game. That's kind of the way I'm reading it.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, are there some games where the big nickel look with 3 safeties is better? Right. Is there a game where playing 5 defensive linemen with Dexter Lawrence as a nose and a B.J. Hill on one side, a Jonathan Allen on another side, or a T.J. Slayton, and then Maffei and Murphy, who can both drop as ends? It's kind of almost a pseudo 3-4, but we'll call it a 5-2. Maybe that's the best use of that talent in that specific game. On offense, maybe it is a week where you are using 2 inline blocking tight ends. Although Eric All's kind of a multi-purpose tight end. He's the only true multi-purpose tight end on the roster, to be honest with you. But is it a week where maybe it's more Drew Sample? Is it more Gesicki is the slot receiver? So that's the thing. I do think there are a lot of different pieces that both coordinators and both sides of the ball can utilize, as opposed to we are Joe Mixon, and we are CJ Uzama, and we're Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. That's it. That's what we got. Those are our guys. Now, I think you can do some mixing and matching. I do think, in Dan Pitcher talking to him a little bit today, it was, I think, point blank brought up of, can you find a way to get Chase Brown more touches? I do think that's something we're going to see, is them try to get more touches for Chase Brown. But again, you also don't want to overdo it. So if you're gonna, and I think their hope would be they run the ball more this year, because why? Because they're playing 4-minute offense at the end of games, running out clocks, and But if you do that, and suddenly Chase is carrying it 27 times a game, every game, that's going to take its toll. So, and I don't think he has that body type, to be honest with you, to take that kind of punishment. But I do think on both sides of the ball, Mike, to your point, I think there's a lot of different things that both coaching staffs can use scheme-wise to show opponents things, because I think they got multi-use people.
Dan Picture was talking about, how to make the most out of his running backs. Obviously, he was asked about, are there different ways of getting Chase Brown involved in the offense, like you said? But it was interesting to me that Dan Picture is very aware of all the discussion about, should the Bengals be playing more under center, which would suggest more of a running game, or at least more in play action.
Yeah.
Right. Or should they just stick with what's worked for Joe Burrow, and that is stay in the shotgun? Obviously, they're a much more shotgun formation type of offense than they are under center. But I think Dan Picture has gotten to the point where he's comfortable with Joe just playing the shotgun. And if they have to give up some things by not using play action as much, they'll just do that, because their weapons, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and to a lesser degree, Mike Gesicki and Andre Yosivage, and who knows who might emerge in that passing game. Maybe it is Eric All. Who knows? Those weapons need to be maximized, to Zach Taylor's earlier point about maximizing all of their talent. They have to be maximized in the passing game. They're not going to be maximized by run blocking, right?
No,
even though Jamal.
But
go ahead.
One thing I would tell you, though, and this is the other thing what Dan said, I'm sure he said to you guys, is asked point blank of, what is your goal to be better at this year? And he said two things. One, stop turning the ball over like we did, where the other team goes and scores touchdowns. That's an easy one. You can literally control that scenario by not turning it over. The other one was, he said, we got to create more big plays. And I think they understand, to create more big plays, you have to do it out of play action more times than not. I think when they go to the shotgun, that's where you see the too high safety look, and they're not going to let Jamar get downfield. They're not going to let T get downfield. And I think in those scenarios, you have to punish them for 6-man boxes. I think that's they started to do that as last year went along. And I think they found something. That doesn't mean you're going to be strictly shotgun or strictly under center. Doesn't mean you're going to be strictly shotgun. I think there is a happy medium that they can find, and I think that's probably what they've been spending the offseason doing. Of, all right, how can we blend both of these things? If we're not always shotgun, and we're not going to go back to exclusively under center, we can marry some of these things up. And I go back to that's where the big plays. I mean, listen, on 3rd and 8, I'm going to put my guy in the shotgun, right? On 1st and 10, I think I'd like to put him under center. On 2nd and 2, I think I'd like to put him under center. You don't know what we're going to do. We may hand it off here just to get the first down, or we may take a shot down the field. And I think that's the things you're going to see more of this year. Yeah, 3rd and 8, but quarterback's got to be in the shotgun. I mean, it's what you have to do. I think there can be a happy medium of these things.
Also, they said earlier in the offseason, Skinny, and I know you recall this, they have to be better on first and 2nd down, more explosive on 1st and 2nd down. That's part of the problem with the offense the last couple of years. It's not that they don't have the weaponry. It's that they're not efficient early in series. They're not good on 1st and 2nd down.
And that's the thing. I mean, listen, this is a league that's really hard to do multiple 15-play, 75-yard drives. All it takes is a holding penalty here, or to your point, a bad first down play there to set you back. Good offenses do it a few times a game, but you can't do it 3 and 4 times a game. You got to hit a couple of home runs, and I think they realize that. Yeah, we've got to do that, and we've got to be better on early downs. Like I said, to get you in a 2nd and 2, and I go under center in 2nd and 2, I might run it. Like I said, to get the first down, I might fake the handoff, and there goes number 1 sliding down the sideline against one-on-one coverage, and you're going to take your shot there. And if I don't make that one, then guess what? I got a 3rd and 2. It's still a very makeable, manageable 3rd down situation.
I know you touched on it earlier, but 3 injuries. Want to bring up B.J. Hill off-season surgery. He's going to be limited to start. He's actually going to be on the PUP list.
Yep.
To start training camp, so we won't see him on the field. Connor Lew has been cleared, but they're going to be very cautious with him, they said today. So the rookie out of Auburn, the center, the would-be replacement eventually, you would assume, for Ted Karras. I'm curious to see how many reps he gets, how they treat him early in training camp. And, the other guy that I'm very curious to see how they handle him is Eric All. Like you mentioned, they mentioned today, he has been cleared for full physical activity, but what does that look like in training camp? What does that look like in preseason games? I'm sure you're interested in seeing how that unfolds.
Yeah, and listen, on a normal circumstance, I would say a guy coming off multiple knee surgeries in such a short period of time, that just doesn't sound right. But, he was pretty honest with us that one day in the off season about how the surgery before this one was all messed up, and the knee was going to go again eventually anyway, and now he feels really confident in it. So maybe this is an Eric All who can overcome that because they finally got the surgery right. And I think he does unlock a lot of things for what they want to do. I know you're always big on the physicality part that you didn't feel they had last few years, and I think you're right. But Eric All isn't one of those guys. I mean, he is super, super physical. I mean, he brings a different level of physicality on that offense. And I do think listen, I think Mike Gesicki's a terrific receiver, but he's not an inline blocker. He never has been. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. He's a tight end in name only. And it's not a knock. It just is what it is. Eric All, though, gives you that 3-down tight end, and I think it's important. I think that gives them then the possibility to play some 12 personnel as opposed to being a 3-wide receiver team all the time. And maybe even when they're in that 12 personnel, one of the two is Gesicki, and he lines up as technically the number 3 receiver in the slot. Or again, there's where Yoshivak I can come in, and Eric All's in there as the tight end because he's a 3-down tight end. I just think I don't want to say he unlocks a lot of things. I just think he gives them a piece that they really have wanted for a while. They finally thought they had him when we saw him as a rookie, and then pow, he gets hurt, and you haven't had him for the last year and a half.
Now, this is just a training camp refresher for fans out there, and I don't mean to insult the intelligence of those fans who are experts at going to training camp. But the first 5 days or so of training camp, you're not going to see pads.
No.
You're just not, just for NFLPA and CBA, collective bargaining agreement reasons. The pads are not on in the first several days of training camp. But once the pads come on, that's when I'm fascinated to see how Dexter Lawrence looks and how the Bengals look and scheme run defense. Because one of the things Zach Taylor mentioned today in the talk about the new look edge rushers was they have to obviously get to the quarterback, but they have to be better against the run.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny you mentioned Dexter Lawrence. We were talking to Dan about him, and he said, yeah, we don't scheme for each other. I mean, we don't have the Bengals on our roster, so we're not scheming to beat the Bengals. He said, but when we're going up against him, we've got to find a way to do some stuff to block him. I mean, this is a different guy that you're trying to play with here. So I do think that'll be interesting, too, to see if, okay, we're not going to have a double team on here just because it's not what the play requires us to have, and Dexter gets a chance in a one-on-one situation, what that might look like. But at the same time, you're thinking, gosh, you better put multiple hands on him or he's going to disrupt your whole practice. It's going to screw the practice up. So I'm fascinated to see what they do with this because I do think that that's something they're thinking long and hard about what he can cause and the havoc he can cause.
I'm fascinated to see how many reps he gets once the pads come on and whether or not they are putting a governor on him and saying, go ahead.
The other part, Mike, to your point of that, and the reps part, I do want to see if, let's just say it's what we would deem the first team defenses out there. And after a couple of snaps, it's 4 new defensive linemen with the rest of the first team defense. Is that really what we're going to have is kind of these series to series shifts? And maybe we will. Maybe that's what they're trying to do is we're going to wear you down with depth up front, and we feel like we've got 4 or 5 tackles who can play,
right,
4 edge rushers who can play, and we're just going to keep sending waves at you. And in the fourth quarter, you're going to be tired. We're going to be fresh. Be interested to see if they do that, though, with a mix and match of those groups with the rest of the first teamers around them. I think if they do that, you're going to know for sure that, okay, this is the plan of attack. They're going to, you're not going to get 100% per game Dexter Lawrence snaps. You're going to get probably 60% snaps because they're trying to keep these guys fresh. And I think it's got a chance to be a real, real positive.
Cassius Howell and Shamar Stewart are going to be two huge storylines. Miles Murphy, to maybe a lesser degree, but he's another big storyline in that defense because he's got to answer the bell this year. I know, certainly he started to do that at the end of last year. But as training camp begins this Wednesday, I want to see what Cassius Howell starts to look like. We've seen a little bit of it in OTAs, but when we start to see 7-on-7s and 11-on-11s, then we see the pads. What Howell will look like, what Shamar Stewart may be playing inside more looks like, and what Miles Murphy looks like. I want to see all of that.
Yeah, it's weird though. Remember last year in training camp, Shamar Stewart looked great. It's like, oh gosh, this guy really does look the part. And then he got hurt, and it just wasn't the same. But I'm with you. I mean, again, getting Boye Mafe not only gives you a proven edge rusher who at least can get to the court. He didn't finish much last year, but he's at least proven he can get there and cause some havoc. And it wasn't like you went into this going, Shamar Stewart has to improve or we're dead at that position. Cassius Howell has to produce right away or we're dead at that position. You need him to produce. It'd be really good if they produce, but it didn't become one of those desperate situations. And I think that's the other good part to this is you don't have to look and go, gosh, these guys are just not doing it. I think both of these guys, I think Shamar Stewart's going to take a step forward, and I think Cassius Howell is going to be a big addition. In fact, there's a part of me that would go so far as to say that Cassius Howell leads this team in sacks. I'm not quite there yet because I do need to see a little bit in training camp to see what that looks like.
You want a player to possibly come out of the blue and really stun people like Mitch Tinsley did last year on the offensive side of the ball. I'll give you a defensive player.
All right.
He's an edge. Isaiah Foskey.
Oh, you and the Isaiah Foskey train. Okay. I hope so.
Well,
I always like those stories.
I mean, I'm not. He's in the background for a reason. I'm not saying he's a starter, but
I know that.
He got enough reps last year, and he was mentioned today by Al Golden when he was mentioning the reps on the defensive edge. I'm like, okay. I think he's being mentioned for a reason. I think they bring him back. I think they believe that this, free agent, undrafted free agent from 2025. I don't know. I think that he could be somebody on the edge that could come in and surprise. There's been so much focus on the core four in terms of the edge rushers.
No, you're right.
We got to look at, sometimes training camp, Skinny, and you know this better than I do, you've got to look beyond the obvious names.
For sure. Yeah,
for guys that are looking to make a name for themselves, certainly when the preseason games begin. But even before that, who shines in practice when the pads are on? Who shows the intent? Who shows the ability to win on a consistent basis, even if he's going up against the 2s and 3s in practice?
Yeah, I mean, I'm drawing a complete blank on the name of the San Diego State kid that they signed, the undrafted free agent who's like 6'9", the offensive tackle. They gave him actually a pretty good signing bonus as well, more than what you would normally give an undrafted free agent. And we've talked about the backup tackle position. I mean, does a kid like that suddenly take a huge step forward? You're like, oh, this might potentially be the swing tackle. I don't think that's the case, again, because he's even undrafted or not, he's still
Corey
just a
Robinson?
Maybe it is Corey Robinson. I thought it was, maybe I'm drawing a total. Maybe it is Corey
or Christian Jones. I think it's Corey.
Christian Jones. Yeah, I think it is.
Okay, there you go.
Yes, I think that's right. So yeah, to your point, those are guys. I mean, I did a story at the end of OTAs and mini camp. Actually, there's a last story I did at the end of mini camp on rookie free agent safety Isaiah Nwokobia, who again, he's at a position where we know who three of them are. We know Jordan Battle, and Brian Cook are starters, and Kyle Duggar's that third guy in the mix. But who's the fourth safety? P.J. Jules, Dejon Anthony, this kid. He certainly has an opportunity, right? The door's at least cracked open to where maybe he makes a jump up and makes this roster as the fourth safety. So we'll see. I mean, I know they like PJ as a gunner, and obviously if you're the fourth safety, Tyson Anderson was kept on the roster as a fourth safety, not very much as a safety, but because of his special teams skills. And so yeah, I mean, he's got to be a really good special teams player.
Anything else on your mind?
No, I think there's, as much as this has been a quiet off season and should be a quiet training camp as opposed to last off season where we had dudes again showing up in bucket hats and threatening not to show up and then holding in and holding everybody hostage, and a certain wide receiver from Alabama not showing up one day and them making excuses for why he wasn't there, and then we really do kind of find out he's just a complete and total utter knucklehead. No, this is when we're talking about some undrafted guys cracking the 5th defensive end spot and the 5th or 4th safety spot and the depth on the at tackle spot. It's got a chance to be a nice, quiet ease into the season training camp for everybody.
And one where I think the productivity meets the expectations and the results meet the expectations. That was my lead of my column on what to look for coming into training camp. And to me, that sums it up pretty concisely. The Bengals' expectations are certainly there, but can they produce the results that are needed to meet those expectations? I want to take, go ahead, Skinny.
No, I was going to say, make sure you plug the event that's going to take place on Thursday at training camp.
So last training camp, the first Thursday or the second day of training camp,
Yep.
I had the brilliant idea to wear something summery, wear something tropical to training camp, keep everybody in the right frame of mind that early in a hot, dreadfully hot day at Bengals training camp. I decided to go with the banana look, the banana shirt. I have a couple of banana shirts, and the lovely Deborah Ann helped me on our cruise of Italy last summer pick out the perfect hat to go with said banana shirt. So I wore that on the second day. It became a viral moment, thanks to Ben Baby of ESPN for helping make it that, as I stunned Jamar Chase on Jamar Chase's media.
Yes, you did.
On his media availability the second day of camp. He may speak on Thursday this year. He may not. But
I think
ahead.
Based on now the person that we had lunch with today, and it was mentioned to said person that Thursday you were going to wear the shirt, and that person said, "Oh, yeah, okay, maybe I'll try to make that happen." She said, "I haven't talked to him yet. I usually at least like to talk to the player to let them give me a, hey, that day's going to work or it's not going to work." I think that person will now try to make that work because of this, Mike.
So, long story short, it's been probably too long anyway for people listening, but long story short, I'm going to wear the banana fit again this Thursday, but there's an added catch. Ben Baby, as I mentioned earlier, and I did a little promo. Look for it up on the social media channels later today and throughout the week leading up to Thursday. And the cause is a good one, and we really, I think, took some time thinking about how can we turn a fun moment into a moment that matters. And that moment that matters is raising awareness and money for the local food pantries and food shelters in the greater Cincinnati area. We, as the media group covering the Bengals, have chosen the Caring Place, but there are many, many, many others that you can donate time, money, food to that need your help in these, let's face it, expensive times. And if we can bring a little bit more awareness to that, then I'll wear whatever makes everybody laugh. And so, Skinny, if you're going to be there Thursday, if you're not, okay, I understand. But whoever's watching this, wear yellow. That's the idea. Bananas, yellow, the theme, get it? So to raise awareness and show support for what we're trying to do for food pantries and food shelters in the greater Cincinnati area. And if you're heading out to training camp on Thursday, that's the second day of camp, not Wednesday, but Thursday, wear yellow. And it goes for a great cause.
Yeah, I know everybody likes to wear their jerseys and their shirts and their orange and black, but it's going to be probably a hot day. Yellow is a nice, cool color, and this is for a really good cause to raise awareness for this. And Ben's the one that had this idea, and kudos to him for getting it off the ground. And again, I hope those that are watching this do pay heed to that and wear yellow.
Yeah, and it's just something we don't always get a chance to do when we can turn a fun event into a profitable, or in this particular case, a worthwhile event to benefit those in need. I think it's obviously certainly worth doing. All right, he is Richard Skinner. Has been covering the Bengals for a long, long time. Appreciate all of his work and appreciate you being on the pod, Skinny. You're not going anywhere, by the way. You'll still be on this pod. I did have people wonder, where's Skinny? Did Trags decide to drop Skinny when Skinny made the move? No. Are you kidding? I'd never do that to Richard Skinner.
Don't lie, because you know what? I'm the only one that'll come on here, Mike. No, I'm kidding you.
You son of a gun.
Yes, I am.
All right. He is Richard Skinner. My name is Mike Petralia, Trags. Want to thank our great sponsor, as always, Prize Picks, and the great team at CLNS Media. Until next we speak, you know the drill. Keep that jungle roaring.